It was just an ordinary Victorian portrait, but look more closely at what she's wearing around her neck. Dr. Michael Brennan had spent 18 years as curator of 19th-century photography at the Philadelphia Museum of American History, but he had never encountered an image quite like this one. The photograph arrived in a collection donated by the Whitfield family estate in Germantown. Inside the donation box were dozens of cabinet cards and tintypes spanning 3 generations of Philadelphia society. Most showed typical scenes from the 1870s and 1880s, formal family gatherings, wedding portraits, children posed with toys. But one photograph stopped him cold. 4 people stood in a photographer's studio. 3 white women, clearly from a wealthy family based on their elaborate clothing, flanked a young black woman who appeared to be in her early 20s. The white women wore matching silk dresses with bustles and intricate beadwork. The black woman stood in the center, wearing a simpler but well-made dark dress with a white collar. The composition itself was unusual. In an era when black domestic workers were occasionally photographed with white families, they were typically positioned at the edges, standing behind, clearly marked as separate. But this young woman stood centered, at the same height as the others, with one of the white women's hands resting on her shoulder in a gesture that looked almost protective. But what stopped Michael wasn't the positioning or even the unusual racial integration for 1878. It was the necklace. The black woman wore a distinctive piece of jewelry, a gold chain with what appeared to be a circular pendant. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary locket. But something about it drew Michael's attention. He lifted his magnifying glass, studying the image more carefully. The pendant wasn't smooth. It had engravings on its surface. Small, deliberate marks that formed a pattern. And hanging from the circular pendant were what looked like 3 small charms or symbols, each a different shape. Michael had examined thousands of Victorian photographs. Jewelry in portraits was common, lockets, brooches, watches. But this piece looked different. Too specific. Too symbolic. The way it caught the light in the photograph suggested it was meant to be noticed, meant to be read. He photographed the portrait with his high-resolution camera, uploading it to his computer. On screen, magnified until the necklace filled his monitor, the details became clearer. The circular pendant had small engravings around its edge. They looked like words, though the resolution wasn't quite sharp enough to read them completely. The 3 charms hanging below were distinct shapes. One appeared to be a key, another looked like a small book, and the third seemed to be a compass or star. In the bottom corner of the cabinet card, embossed in fading gold, were the words, Garrison Portrait Studios, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1878. Michael couldn't shake the image from his mind. That evening, he returned to his apartment in Center City and spread his research materials across his dining table. He had photographed every page of the Whitfield family collection, and now he scrolled through the digital files looking for context. The album contained 38 photographs spanning from 1870 to 1895. The 3 white women appeared in multiple images, clearly sisters from a prominent Philadelphia family. But the young black woman appeared in only 3 photographs, this studio portrait, 1 outdoor image from what looked like the same year, and 1 later photograph from 1880. In each image, she wore the same necklace. Michael zoomed in on each photograph. In the outdoor image, taken in a garden, the necklace was partially visible beneath a shawl. In the 1880 photograph, where she appeared slightly older, the necklace hung prominently over a dark dress, and the detail was even clearer, the engravings, the 3 charms, all unmistakable. He opened his database of abolitionist and post-Civil War reform movements in Philadelphia. The city had been a center of anti-slavery activism before the war, home to Quaker abolitionists, free black communities, and stations on the Underground Railroad. After the war ended in 1865, many of these networks had continued, transforming into organizations focused on education, civil rights, and supporting formerly enslaved people building new lives. His phone buzzed. His colleague, Dr. Lydia Morrison, a specialist in African American history at Temple University, responded to his earlier text. "Free tomorrow afternoon. What did you find?" Michael typed back, a photograph that might document something we've missed about interracial reform networks in Reconstruction-era Philadelphia. Bring your sources on Quaker abolitionists and black educational societies. Lydia arrived at the museum at 2 p.m. sharp, carrying a worn leather bag filled with research materials. Michael had the portrait projected on the wall of his research room, larger than life. The four women gazed down at them with quiet dignity. "Look at her necklace," Michael said, pointing with a laser pointer at the black woman in the center. "Every detail is deliberate. The engravings, the three charms, key, book, compass. This isn't just jewelry." Lydia approached the projection, her eyes narrowing. She set down her bag and pulled out a thick folder filled with documents about Philadelphia's abolitionist networks. After the Civil War ended, many white abolitionists continued working with newly freed black communities, Lydia began. Particularly Quakers in Philadelphia. They established schools, helped families locate separated relatives, provided legal assistance, taught literacy. She spread documents across the table. Letters from Quaker families describing their work with freedmen's schools. Newspaper articles about integrated educational societies. Court records showing white lawyers defending black clients' property rights. But these relationships were complicated, Lydia continued. Even progressive whites often held paternalistic views. However, some relationships evolved into genuine partnerships. Black teachers and organizers working alongside white reformers, creating educational networks, mutual aid societies. Michael picked up a letter dated 1877, written by a Philadelphia Quaker woman named Rebecca Whitfield. "Our work with the Colored Educational Society continues. Miss Sarah Freeman has proven herself an extraordinary teacher. Her dedication to our shared mission of universal literacy is unmatched. She has become as dear to me as my own sisters." "Freeman," Michael said quietly. "Sarah Freeman." Lydia looked up sharply. "That name appears in multiple sources." Sarah Freeman was a prominent black educator in Philadelphia in the 1870s and 1880s. She was born enslaved in Virginia, escaped to Philadelphia during the war, and became a teacher. She worked with several Quaker families establishing schools for black children. The embossed studio name, Garrison Portrait Studios, proved to be significant. Michael found references to the studio in Philadelphia city directories from 1872 to 1885. The photographer, David Garrison, was a documented abolitionist who had photographed anti-slavery activists before the war. But it was an article in an 1879 issue of The Friend, a Quaker periodical, that provided the breakthrough. Tucked in the back pages was a small notice about a memorial service for David Garrison, who had recently died. The article mentioned his decades of service to the abolitionist cause and included this line: "Brother Garrison often donated his photographic services to document the bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood formed across racial lines in our educational mission. His portraits preserved evidence of our shared commitment to equality." "Documented the bonds," Lydia read aloud. "Preserved evidence." This wasn't just a family photograph. It was documentation of an interracial partnership. Michael researched the Whitfield family. They were prominent Philadelphia Quakers with a long history of anti-slavery activism. The three white women in the photograph were Rebecca, Martha, and Elizabeth Whitfield, sisters who had established a school for black children in 1874. In the archives of the Philadelphia Historical Society, Michael found the school's records. The Whitfield Freeman School for Colored Children had operated from 1874 to 1891, teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and practical skills to over 300 students. The teaching staff listed included the three Whitfield sisters and Sarah Freeman as co-founders. Co-founders. Not employees. Not assistants. Equal partners. But it was a journal entry from Rebecca Whitfield, dated June 1878, that explained the necklace. "Today we commissioned a special token to commemorate the 5th anniversary of our school and to symbolize the covenant between us. Sarah and I designed it together, a gold medallion engraved with our school's motto, 'Knowledge unlocks freedom.' Below hang 3 charms representing the foundation of our work: a key for knowledge that opens doors, a book for education that transforms lives, and a compass for guidance toward justice. We 4 sisters, for that is what we have become, though the world sees only difference, shall each wear an identical piece, visible evidence that we stand together in this mission. Michael's hands trembled as he read. He looked at the projected photograph with new understanding. The necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was a symbol of an equal partnership, a visible declaration that these 4 women, 3 white, 1 black, considered themselves bound together in shared purpose. They called themselves sisters, Lydia said softly, reading over his shoulder. In 1878, when interracial friendship was scandalous, when even progressive whites maintained hierarchical relationships with black colleagues, these women claimed sisterhood. Michael searched for more evidence. In the Whitfield family papers, he found correspondence between the sisters and Sarah Freeman spanning nearly 2 decades. The letters weren't those of employers and employee. They were intimate, personal, filled with mutual affection and respect. Martha Whitfield wrote to Sarah in 1880, "Dear sister in purpose and in heart, your letter brought such comfort during this difficult time. Know that we stand with you always, bound by more than our shared work, bound by love and commitment that transcends the artificial barriers this world places between us." Sarah Freeman wrote to Elizabeth Whitfield in 1882, "My beloved friend, when I wear the necklace we commissioned, I am reminded that I do not stand alone. Our bond, symbolized in gold and sealed with shared conviction, gives me strength to continue when others question my right to teach, my capacity to lead. You 3 have given me not just support, but true sisterhood." Lydia contacted Dr. Thomas Freeman, a genealogist specializing in black Philadelphia families. Thomas arrived the next day, intrigued by Michael's description of Sarah Freeman's documented partnership with the Whitfield sisters. "Sarah Freeman is legendary in my research," Thomas explained. Born enslaved in 1852 in Richmond, Virginia. Escaped to Philadelphia in 1864 at age 12 during the final year of the war. Was taken in by the Colored Orphans Home, received education, showed exceptional academic ability. By age 20, she was teaching, which was extraordinary for a formerly enslaved woman. He pulled out documents from his research files. But what's remarkable is how far she went. She didn't just teach, she became an administrator, an advocate for black education, a public speaker. And she did it in partnership with the Whitfield sisters, who used their privilege to open doors while Sarah provided the vision and leadership. Thomas showed them a newspaper article from 1885, reporting on an educational conference where Sarah Freeman had spoken publicly about the need for black teachers to lead black schools. This was radical for the time, he explained. And she could do it because she had the backing of prominent white Quaker families. They protected her, elevated her voice, insisted on treating her as an equal. Michael found additional photographs in the Garrison Studios collection. 3 more portraits showed women wearing identical necklaces, the circular medallion with 3 charms. In one photograph, Rebecca Whitfield wore it with a formal dress. In another, Martha Whitfield displayed it prominently over a Quaker-style plain dress. The third showed Elizabeth Whitfield wearing hers at what appeared to be an outdoor gathering. They each had one made, Lydia realized. 4 identical necklaces. A symbol visible to anyone who saw them that they were connected, that they considered themselves equals, that their bond transcended race. But it was the final discovery that brought the full story into focus. In Sarah Freeman's personal papers, preserved by her descendants and archived at the Library Company of Philadelphia, Michael found a small leather journal. Inside, Sarah had written extensively about her life, her work, and her relationship with the Whitfield sisters. One entry, dated July 1878, just after the photograph was taken, was particularly moving. "Today we had our portrait made at Garrison Studio, the 4 of us together as we truly are, sisters in purpose. Rebecca insisted we commission identical necklaces to mark our covenant. When the jeweler questioned why a colored woman would wear the same piece as white ladies, Rebecca told him firmly that we are equals in God's eyes and in our shared mission. I wore the necklace for our portrait with pride. Let the world see that I stand among them not as subordinate but as sister. The three charms represent our shared conviction: knowledge unlocks freedom, education transforms lives, guidance toward justice sustains our work. When I look at this necklace, I see not just gold but a promise, that these women will stand with me, that our bond is real, that together we can build something that lasts. 6 months after discovering the photograph, Michael organized an exhibition at the Philadelphia Museum of American History titled, Bonds of Sisterhood, Interracial Partnership in Reconstruction-Era Philadelphia. He displayed the original photograph of the 4 women, along with the other images showing the necklaces, documents from the school, letters between Sarah and the Whitfield sisters, and Sarah's journal entries. The exhibition attracted immediate attention. Thomas Freeman attended, bringing 5 other descendants of Sarah Freeman, including her great-great-granddaughter, Angela Freeman Johnson, a high school principal in North Philadelphia. Angela stood before the projected photograph, tears streaming down her face. I knew my great-great-grandmother was a teacher. I knew she was important. But I never knew the full story. Never knew she had white women who truly considered her an equal, who called her sister. Descendants of the Whitfield sisters also attended. Margaret Whitfieldchen, a college professor and great-great-grandniece of Rebecca Whitfield, brought her own family members. Our family always talked about the school, Margaret said. But the stories got simplified over generations. We thought the Whitfield sisters ran a charity school. We didn't realize it was a true partnership, that Sarah Freeman was a co-founder, that they considered themselves bound together as equals. The most powerful moment came when Angela and Margaret stood together before the photograph. 2 women, one black and one white, descendants of women who had claimed sisterhood 145 years earlier, meeting for the first time because of a necklace that had preserved their ancestors' bond. We should continue what they started, Angela said quietly. Our great-great-grandmothers built something together. We should honor that. Within months, Angela and Margaret had established the Freeman Whitfield Educational Foundation, providing scholarships for Philadelphia students pursuing teaching careers. The foundation's logo featured the 3 charms from the original necklace: key, book, compass. Michael's research expanded as other historians contacted him about similar findings. Evidence of genuine interracial partnerships in other cities, documented through photographs, letters, and symbolic objects. Each case showed individuals who had moved beyond the typical hierarchical relationships of the era to create something more equal, more genuine. But none had a symbol quite as powerful as the necklace. A year after discovering the photograph, Michael stood in the museum's conservation lab, carefully handling the original cabinet card. They had digitally preserved all the images and documents from the Freeman-Whitfield partnership, creating an online archive accessible to researchers and descendants. But he kept returning to that first photograph. Sarah Freeman in the center, the Whitfield sisters flanking her, all 4 looking directly at the camera with expressions of quiet dignity and determination. And there, prominently displayed over Sarah's dark dress, the gold necklace catching the light, 3 charms hanging below the engraved medallion, each one a promise: knowledge, education, justice. Thomas Freeman had located the necklace itself. It had been passed down through Sarah's descendants and was now owned by Angela Freeman Johnson, who had agreed to loan it to the museum for the exhibition. Michael examined it under careful lighting. The gold had aged but remained beautiful. The engravings were still clear: knowledge unlocks freedom, circled the medallion's edge. The 3 charms, key, book, compass, hung from delicate chains, each one crafted with obvious care. They meant for this to last, Angela had said when she brought it to the museum. My great-great-grandmother wore this necklace until she died in 1923 at age 71. It was buried with her, then my great-grandmother had the grave reopened to retrieve it, because she said it was too important to lose. It's been passed down through our family ever since, and we've always known it meant something special, but we didn't know the full story until now. The necklace became the centerpiece of the exhibition, displayed in a climate-controlled case alongside the photograph. Visitors would stand for long minutes, looking from the necklace to the photograph and back again, making the connection across 145 years. The Philadelphia Inquirer ran a feature article, Hidden in Plain Sight, How a Necklace Reveals Forgotten Story of Interracial Sisterhood. National media followed. NPR produced a segment. The Smithsonian expressed interest in featuring the story in their African American History Museum. But for Michael, the power of the discovery remained personal. He thought of Sarah Freeman, born enslaved, escaped to freedom, became an educator and leader. He thought of the Whitfield sisters, using their privilege not to dominate but to elevate, insisting on true partnership in an era when such relationships were almost unthinkable. And he thought of the necklace, a simple piece of jewelry that carried such profound meaning. A symbol commissioned deliberately, worn proudly, photographed intentionally, preserved carefully, and passed down through generations until it could finally tell its full story. In Sarah Freeman's journal, she had written one final reflection about the necklace in 1920, 3 years before her death. "I am nearly 70 now, and still I wear the necklace. The gold has faded but the meaning has not. When young people ask me about it, I tell them it represents the most important truth I have learned, that genuine equality is possible, that bonds of true sisterhood can transcend the barriers this world erects, that when we stand together in shared purpose, regardless of race, regardless of what society says is possible, we can build something that endures. Rebecca, Martha, and Elizabeth have all passed now, but when I wear this necklace I feel them with me still. We 4 sisters, bound not by blood but by choice, by conviction, by love. The key, the book, the compass, knowledge, education, justice. These were not just symbols. They were our lives' work, and we did that work together, as equals, as sisters. Let this necklace remain as evidence that such bonds are possible, that such partnerships can exist, that the future can be different from the past if we choose to make it so." Michael had those words engraved on a plaque beside the exhibition. Visitors would read them, look at the necklace, study the photograph, and understand, sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest truths. Sometimes a piece of jewelry is more than decoration. Sometimes it's a declaration, a promise, a bridge across time. And sometimes, you just need to zoom in closely enough to see the revolution hanging around someone's neck.